What is up? What is up, everybody? Thank you guys for being here. Make sure you hit that like button, hit that share button, hit that subscribe button. Let me do a quick sound check. Thank you guys for being here. Make sure you hit. All right, I think we sound all right. We sound all right. So tonight's topic is Trump EBT Israel updates, ties being cut, quantum financial system being finalized. So remember that article I shared with you guys about Trump administration cabinet members going into military protection? Um, and my speculation about it possibly having something to do with Israel. Well, isn't it funny? Isn't it funny that now Trump is starting to openly show resistance or opposition to the Netanyahu regime of Israel? And this comes right after I also shared with you guys that JD Vance refused to do the wall kissing in Israel. Remember, I told you that was the first signal? Well, it seems like Trump is signaling a departure from Israel because, well, for one, it's been way too long that they've had our government infiltrated. And two, we've been waiting too long for this day to come. But I've been telling you guys, Trump is not friends with Israel. He has to pretend to be. Excuse me. He has to pretend to be. And he has to pretend to be because they have sleeper cells all over the country. And with those sleeper cells all over the country, it's not safe to openly cut ties. So he's got to play the kiss ass game. He's got to play the I support Israel game, but he does not support Israel. So what's happening now is everything is coming to a head. The Democrats in Congress are losing political support. The criminals amongst them are being arrested and indicted. Their foot soldiers on the streets are being arrested and indicted, some of them being picked up by the military, others being arrested by the FBI. And you have massive protests in Israel that are still going on, that have been happening this whole time against the Netanyahu regime. And oddly enough, Trump is now posting images of those protests, which obviously shows that he's on the side. Excuse me. I am tired as a dog, man. I was having a good day until stupid shit started happening, but nevertheless, the Trump posting images of the protests against Netanyahu is Trump signaling that he's on the side of the people. Because I've been telling you guys, the people of Israel are not aligned with, or the majority of the people are not aligned with what Netanyahu is doing. They don't support their government. And now that Trump has, I would presume, has eliminated enough of the sleeper cells to where it's a little safer to go public with his opposition to Israel, now we're starting to see it. And what's funny is, on the heels of all this, there was this crazy ass plane crash, a UPS plane that crashed in Louisville, Kentucky. And it killed several people, including the crew. And it appeared to me to be a mass casualty event that was deliberate, like sabotage of some sort. And it reminded me, like, it took me back to the months when Doge was doing their investigations and all these planes were like just randomly crashing and falling out of the sky. It almost seemed like they were being deliberately sabotaged. And my first instinct when I heard about the plane crash in Kentucky, my first instinct was, this was an act of terrorism. This was deliberate. And this was a deliberate mass casualty event rather than an accidental one. Although On the surface, it appears to be 100% accidental. But what 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 really raised my antennas about that plane crash is that it came right after I saw this article. This article was November 2nd, and I believe the plane crash happened on November 3rd, which was strange. And this article here is from Travel and Tour World, and it says thousands of passengers grounded in U.S. as Frontier, American, JetBlue, Delta, Alaska, and other airlines cancel 172 flights and cause 4,100 delays, affecting Chicago, Arlington, Pennsylvania, Indianapolis, New York, Norfolk, and more. And as I skimmed through the article, because I did skim the article, they didn't really seem to give a definitive reason for these delays. They just said it was disruptions in with the workforce, worker shortages, and that type of stuff. But they never said it was this one or two particular incidents that triggered these delays, which I thought was weird because when I first heard about the delays, I was like, well, something's happening. Flights are being grounded for some reason. And of course, the FAA is the feds. So let's presume that the FBI got word that there was a terror plot against major airlines, and they had suspects in mind, or they knew that the plot was going to go down. Well, you thwart the plot by grounding the flights and going after the perps. Now, remember that bust that happened in Dearborn? The FBI knew ahead of time that these guys were planning something, and before they could carry it out, the FBI was on top of their heads. So could it be that there were plans to attack major airlines and the FBI stepped in and shut it down? Possibly. Thousands of passengers were grounded across the U.S. as Frontier, American Airlines, JetBlue, Delta, Alaska, and other major carriers canceled 172 flights. It caused over 4,100 delays. The widespread disruptions, which affected airports in Chicago, Arlington, Pennsylvania, Indianapolis, LaGuardia, Norfolk, and many others, were triggered by a combination of operational challenges, staffing shortages, and airport congestion. The massive delays and cancellations left passengers stranded for hours, highlighting the vulnerabilities in the U.S. air travel system. So they're basically just calling it a travel disruption. But you have to wonder what would cause this disruption. They're saying operational challenges, staffing shortages, and airport congestion. Well, these big cities tend to regularly have airport congestion. So the airport congestion couldn't be, in my mind, it wouldn't be a valid excuse, right? But the operational challenges, what would be the operational challenges? Well, that could be due to staffing shortages. Now, what would cause the staffing shortages? Could it be that there was a network of sleeper cells working within these airlines whose job it was to sabotage these planes so we could have a series of aircrafts falling out of the sky, killing mass numbers of people? So as these people were being arrested by the feds, those jobs were being vacated, essentially causing staffing shortages. That could be it. Or it could be that workers are going on strike, or these DEI motherfuckers are quitting or getting fired. It could be anything. But I'm leaning towards terrorism because right after this article was published, literally the next day, there was a massive plane crash in Kentucky. And I know when you hear Kentucky, you think small towns, country towns, rural, this and that. But Louisville, Kentucky is actually a pretty densely populated metropolitan area. And when that plane crashed, one of the engines caught on fire as it was trying to take off. So it was moving at a pretty high rate of speed. Because the engine was damaged, it couldn't pick up enough lift to get into the sky, And so it just went straight and crashed into buildings right off of the runway and killed several people, including the crew, including individuals that were patronizing those businesses that the plane exploded into. So we have a day prior, this mysterious mass delays of flights and cancellations. And then the very next day, we get a plane crash. I don't know about you, but I smell a rat. Something seems weird to me. Barnes Homestead, what up, brother? He says, Real Raw News reports a recent Trump assassination attempt foiled at a D.C. eatery. The Secret Service taste tester was caught by Vance in the eatery's kitchen, sprinkling, quote-unquote, salt on a filet mignon. The salt, quote-unquote, turned out to be ricin, and the agent was arrested after Vance ordered him to taste it first. The agent then responded, "I stand with Antifa." He is currently in custody. But anyway, we already know that the liberal establishment, the leftist political establishment, has sleepers embedded in Trump's circle. We already know that. And that would explain why one of Trump's own Secret Service agents stands with Antifa. I mean, I'm not surprised. Are you? But I thought that the plane crash in Louisville that happened on the 3rd of November has something to do with these delays that happened. I believe that, and maybe I'm wrong, maybe I'm right. Now, as far as the government shutdown, people on the left who are staunch Democrat supporters and hardcore Trump haters, people like Charlemagne the God, for example, are now starting to call it like it is because it can no longer be ignored. Throw in the towel. Radio host Charlemagne the God urged Democrats to give up and end the government shutdown, saying that the party has already lost the fight. See, I knew the Democrat voters would see right through this. This will become a noose around the Democrats' necks in the Senate and House. And what's crazy is all this is happening right now, and we got the midterms coming up next year. Now, the media and, of course, the Democrats are desperately trying to spin this narrative that it's the Republicans who are keeping the government shut down. But that's not the case, because the Republicans had proposed a resolution that did not involve giving taxpayer money to illegal aliens, which would be essentially against the law. But Democrats wanted to pass a resolution that did give money and free health care to illegal aliens, which is in direct violation of immigration law, because these are illegal aliens. These are not legal immigrants. They're not even entitled to be in the United States, much yet reap any benefits of being in the United States. So the Republicans vote yes on their resolution. The Democrats keep voting no. And this is why the government stays shut down. Seeing that Democrats can't count, this should help. It takes 60 to pass. So it takes 60 votes in the Senate to pass the resolution. We're getting 53 Republicans, or 52 Republicans, because Rand Paul is siding with the Democrats, and we're getting 0 Democrats voting yes to pass the resolution. So with 53, if all 53 Republicans voted yes, you'd still need 7 Democrats to vote yes with it in order to get it to pass. But they're all saying no, and it's not passing, so the government stays shut down. Food stamps still have not been disbursed, regardless of what Trump said about allocating the funds to fund the SNAP program. Now, if you look here in the corner, these 2 yellow spots are independents, but they caucus with Democrats. And this is very important to note, because this speaks to something that I've been saying to you guys for a long time. The government is divided between Democrats and Republicans. The Democrats are ran by the international Masons, the Illuminati Masons. The Republicans are the American Masons, and they don't get down with that satanic shit, at least for the most part. And the people in Congress that call themselves independents are not independent at all. They're Democrats. They just call themselves independent because it's more palatable to their constituents in their districts. But they're Democrats. Remember, Bernie Sanders in 2016, in the 2016 primary, he ran as an independent, but somehow found himself in the Democrat primary. How did that happen? Because they're not independent. They just say they are. So it's the Democrats that are keeping the government shut down. And interestingly enough, USDA uncovers massive SNAP fraud after blue states refused to cooperate. So the USDA was investigating where the food stamp money was going, and it turns out that in these blue states, in these sanctuary cities, a large percentage of the SNAP funding was going to illegal aliens. So everybody that's mad that their food stamps are running out, most of those people who voted for the Democrats that brought in the illegals, a lot of that money got wasted on the illegals. And if the money wasn't wasted on the illegals, the money would be there to feed your hungry ass right now. And that leads to what Trump has decided to do, which we'll get to in a minute. Let me get to the next slide. I hate that they don't show up in order. I can't stand that shit. So the government shutdown caused Head Start programs to close, impacting early education and childcare for families. It also led to a lapse in SNAP benefits for millions, despite federal judges ordering the Trump administration to use contingency funds for payments. Politicians from both parties continue to blame each other for the impasse. And of course, this is from ABC News. And of course, ABC News is part of the media that's trying to spin it as if it's as if the Republicans have a hand in this, but it's solely the Democrats that are keeping the government shut down. So it ain't politicians from both parties blaming each other. It's the Democrats being wrong and lying and pretending as if it's the Republicans that are wrong. So it ain't politicians blaming each other. It's the side that's on the side of right calling out the side that's wrong, and the side that's wrong lying and trying to recreate reality to fit their bullshit narrative. That's what it is. And now that the Head Start programs are going to be shut down, once the people, those Democratic voters, realize that the political party they support is more interested in getting their way politically than passing a resolution so their constituents can get the funding that they need. Once they realize that, the Democrats are cooked. And we just had a few elections that just happened recently, and Democrats got elected, oddly enough. Mamdani is now the mayor of New York City. Spanberger, whatever the hell her name is, that white lady, that white liberal Democrat lady, is now the governor of Virginia. And I believe they stole those elections. Honestly, I believe they stole the elections because we already know New York City elections are rigged as fuck. And Virginia has always had their share of problems. So I would have to assume election fraud was to blame for this, but we'll see. Now, certain states are covering SNAP benefits amid the government shutdown. And here's a chart that shows you which states are doing it and which states are not. So you got the tan, the red, the blue, and then there's a little bit of orange there. Okay. So the red, they're not putting out any money for SNAP. The yellow is increasing food bank funds. The orange is direct financial aid. The blue is increased food bank funds and direct financial aid. So who's doling out money to their people? You got Virginia, Maryland. What is that? New Hampshire, I believe. And what state is that right there? Vermont and New Mexico. Yeah, because that's Arizona, California. And you got the conservative states saying, hell no, we won't go. We're not giving you shit. And the brown states, the tan states, which is a mixture of Democrat and Republican states, they're funding the food banks. So at least they're trying to take steps to make sure that their people get fed while their Democrat colleagues in Congress keep the government shut down. Now, what I foresee happening here is what they're doing is they're continuing to feed the animals rather than cutting off the artificial food supply. And what that's going to lead to is mass dependency continuing in the states that are going to continue to fund the free food programs. Now, that's on the downside. On the upside is hungry people are going to get fed. So I can't really be too opinionated about this issue, because as a believer in states' rights, I believe states have a right to do with their funding whatever they wish to do, even if it means fucking up their economy, which it probably will. Now, speaking of, you remember that analogy that I made about feeding the animals, the signs that say don't feed the animals in the park? You guys remember that analogy from the last show? I know it was 2 days ago or 3 days ago, so it might not be so fresh in your minds right now. But I found this to be extremely ironic that I used that analogy. And now we have reports of certain Walmarts installing cages at the front of their stores to lock up people who try to steal food. Because, of course, you got all these SNAP recipients making threats openly online saying that they're going to loot these stores and they're going to shoplift and they're going to steal food and whatever. So now Walmart's putting in the cages. What's that tell you? That means my analogy was a little more accurate than I even thought. And I said specifically, the elite establishment views you, the people, as animals. And now that you're being fed, now that the establishment has been feeding the animals and the animals have become dependent on being fed by the establishment, once the establishment decides not to feed the animals anymore, they're going to die, they're going to crash out, and they're going to have to be put in cages. So it seems like Walmart is quite familiar with that analogy that I made, and they are making, they're not hesitating to show the people exactly what they think of them. You're going to act like an animal, we're going to cage you like an animal. Walmart's new mini jail shocks shoppers. Shoppers at the Branson Walmart were stunned today to see what looked like jail cells installed inside the store near the money center. The security detention area reportedly allows Walmart employees to hold suspected shoplifters on site until police arrive. So now that the animals aren't getting fed, they're going to wild out. They're going to wild the fuck out. And when they start wilding out, Walmart's got the cages ready to lock their asses up. So they do see you as animals. And once you start acting like an animal, they'll be more than happy to treat you like one. And that's sad. Now, the USDA warned grocery stores against offering special discounts to SNAP recipients as benefits are stalled during the government shutdown. This enforcement of the equal treatment rule prevents stores from aiding struggling families despite court orders to release funds. So, what the USDA is essentially telling these grocery stores by telling them they can't offer special discounts to SNAP recipients is that you can't discriminate. Because if the grocery stores were to say, hey, if you're a SNAP recipient, you can buy these apples for $1 a pound, But if you're not a SNAP recipient, you got to pay the full price of $3 a pound. That essentially amounts to discrimination. So the USDA is reminding grocery stores that you cannot engage in this type of economic discrimination, which means SNAP recipients are going to have to pay either pay the full price, or if you are going to discount your your groceries, your goods, the discounts must apply across the board. So whether they're SNAP recipients or not should not determine whether these shoppers are entitled to these discounts. And what I think is going to happen is, if these stores really need the business of these SNAP recipients, they're going to end up lowering their prices. So it appears as if with this scenario, it appears as if the price drop is already going to start to take shape. Because again, the stores have to move that merchandise, because if that food sits on the shelf, it's perishable, and the perishables will go bad, become unsellable, and have to be dumped, and it costs to dump. So they'll go from having all this merchandise, which could amount to potential profits, to having all this waste to dump, which is going to end up being a loss of the cost they paid for the merchandise and the cost they pay to dispose of it all. So they're going to have to drop their prices to empty those shelves so they can restock and resupply. So the way I see this turning out is the stores are going to offer discounts, but the discounts are going to apply across the board. And those discounts amount to decreases in the food prices. So again, the cutting off of the EBT is already beginning to trigger a discount in the food prices. So the latest report that we got was that the judge ruled that Trump has to fund the SNAP program. And this article here from, I believe it's CBS, says that yes, the Trump administration will partially fund SNAP benefits during the ongoing government shutdown using contingency funds to cover about half of the normal monthly allotments for November. This decision follows court orders that require the administration to continue funding the program. Key details. The administration is using a supplemental nutrition assistance program contingency fund that holds approximately $4.65 billion, enough to cover roughly 50% of the normal monthly cost, which is upwards of $8 billion. Now, on the last show, remember I was telling you that on Sunday's show, we were reading the article where it said that Monday, on the 3rd, the decision was going to be made either on Monday or Wednesday. And today is Wednesday. And what did I tell you? They're going to drag it out till Wednesday, and then they're going to do the partial funding, take the partial funding option. And that seems to be the case here, where Trump is going to use the $4.65 billion to fund 50% of the EBT benefits. The administration declined to use other available funds, such as unused tariff revenue, in a separate Section 32 account, which could have provided full funding as suggested by federal judges. The partial payments mean that the more than 42 million Americans who rely on the program will receive significantly reduced benefits. Due to the administrative and technical changes needed to issue partial payments, officials have warned that it could take several weeks or even months for recipients in some states to receive their benefits, exacerbating hardship. So, in spite of the judge's rulings and Trump's Trump's apparent capitulation, there's still going to be a hold on the food stamps, and these people are still not going to get their benefits right away. The use of the contingency fund will completely deplete it, meaning there will be no remaining money for new SNAP applicants for potential needs in December if the shutdown continues. And that's another thing. Once Trump disperses the contingency funds and that money is gone, if the government is still shut down, SNAP is going to go right back into where it's at now. Zero balance, no money for anybody. And I was always kind of leaning on the side of Trump being reluctant to release the money and fund that entitlement program. And it seems like the administration is finding every way to circumvent putting that money out. The initial plan had been to freeze payments entirely starting November 1st, but this was challenged in court by multiple states and nonprofit groups, leading to the judge's rulings that mandated the use of the available contingency funds. Exactly, Barnes. Once the contingency funds are gone, they are gone. And the latest report from yesterday, it seems like Trump did a complete 180. Breaking: President Donald Trump is ignoring federal court orders, stopping full SNAP benefits for recipients during the government shutdown. So at first, Trump said, all right, you know what? I'll fund the SNAP program. And then on the 4th of November, yesterday, Trump said, you know what? Fuck that. I'm not funding nothing. And he said he's not funding nothing until the Democrats open up the government, end the shutdown. MAGA Voice breaks it down and posted Trump's actual statement on it. So we'll look at that. President Trump stuns America by announcing SNAP benefits will only be given out when the Democrats open in the government. This is exactly what I voted for, says MAGA Voice. And this was Donald Trump's post from Truth Social. Says SNAP benefits, which increased by billions and billions of dollars, manyfold, during crooked Joe Biden's disastrous term in office due to the fact that they were haphazardly handed to anyone for the asking, as opposed to just those in need, which is the purpose of SNAP, will be given only when the radical left Democrats open up government, which they can easily do, and not before. Thank you for your attention to this matter, President Donald J. Trump. So the judges ruled and said you got to release the funding. So Trump set the funding aside, but he's not dispersing the funding until the Democrats vote on the continuing resolution. So now the media is going to take this and run with this and say, well, Trump is holding the country hostage and blah, blah, blah. But it ain't Trump that's holding the country hostage. It's the Democrats that are holding the country hostage, because Trump and the Republicans, that are on Trump's side, they're voting yes. And they voted 13 or 14 times on a continuing resolution so far. And the Democrats so far have continually said no. So it's the Democrats shutting down the fucking government. But of course, they're going to find a way to blame Trump, because everything bad that the Democrats do that has adverse effects on the population has to be Trump's fault. But while all this is going on with the EBT stuff, so now stores are probably more than likely, because now they're going to be put in a position where they're forced to, they're going to have to lower their prices to encourage more shoppers to spend their money and to accommodate the SNAP recipients who normally wouldn't have the actual money, but they would be shopping with their food stamps. Now they can shop with their own money at discounted prices. So this is going to lower the food prices. And it's also, again, making the Democrats look like fools, and they're losing support. But in terms of the quantum financial system, there's been some very interesting things Donald Trump has been doing. He just took a trip to Asia, brought Scott Bessent with him, who is the Treasury Secretary. And he met with Putin. Bessent was there. He met with Xi Jinping. Bessent was there. Met with the other Asian countries. Bessent was there. And Donald Trump is going, he had a meeting in Miami today, November 5th, with business leaders and the mayor of Miami. And guess who else was there? Scott Bessent. Of course, Lionel Messi, Will Smith, and a bunch of other big names were there speaking. But it was a business forum. He was meeting with the American Business Forum. So this was a meeting about economics, about business, and the meeting was held in Miami because Miami is one of America's largest import ports. Port of Miami. And the fact that Scott Bessent is traveling with him is pretty interesting because I looked up what Scott Bessent's stance is on a gold-backed currency, right? And this was very interesting because, of course, the quantum financial system involves a gold-backed currency, right? So check this out. I'm going to read this to you. And on the surface, it appears as if Scott Bessent is opposed to switching to a gold-backed currency. But listen to what it says. U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent does not advocate for a return to a full gold-backed dollar or a gold standard in the traditional sense. He supports maintaining the dollar's status as the world's reserve currency with a fiat monetary system. While Bessent has been labeled a gold bug in some circles and calls gold a historical store of value, he views it as an asset rather than the basis for the entire currency system. His specific proposal regarding gold involves revaluing U.S. gold reserves. He has floated the idea of updating the official outdated book value of the U.S. government's gold reserves, currently pegged at $42.22 per ounce, to reflect the current market price. So he wants to revalue the gold to reflect the current market price. Take note of that, because that's making the value of the gold match the value of our dollar. A one-time fiscal boost. This accounting adjustment could add nearly $1 trillion to the Treasury's balance sheet, which he suggested could be used to fund tax cuts or reduce the deficit without changing the dollar's underlying fiat status. So he's basically saying, keep calling the dollar a fiat dollar, whatever, but we're going to back it up by gold because we're going to keep the exact value of the dollar, of the cash in circulation. We're going to keep that exact value in gold. We're going to value the gold at that amount. That's a gold-backed currency without calling it a gold-backed currency. It's important to note that a viral social media post claiming Bessent committed to adopting a gold-backed currency was a hoax and fact-checked as false. His official stance, confirmed by the Treasury Department, and his public statements focuses on a strong dollar policy and modern financial innovations like stable coins. Now that's your digital currency, which he believes will increase demand for U.S. treasuries, not gold as a currency anchor. And the difference is, when you use gold as a currency anchor, you have a gold-backed currency. You have to call it that. And once you decide to switch from a swap from fiat to gold-backed currency, all debts written in fiat currency that don't have a forward contract, which is an agreement that stipulates the terms of the valuation of the currencies in the event of a currency swap, which no domestic loan contracts have. If you switch to a gold-backed currency, that nullifies all your fiat debts. Now we're operating with a gold-backed currency and everybody's debt-free with a clean slate. That will destroy the banks. That will destroy the economic system, which I believe is going to happen in the near future. But this is going to be the transition period where we teeter in between, as Scott Bessent is proposing. We teeter in between calling the dollar a fiat currency, but treating the dollar as if it's gold, as if it's backed by gold, because we have enough gold to back it. And the implementation of the stable coins would be the digital currency based on the US dollar. It won't be a central bank digital currency, because central bank digital currencies are 100% fiat with no backing whatsoever. But if we have gold reserves that match our cash reserves, then digitizing it into a stable coin would essentially create a precious metals backed digital currency, which would make it compatible with the quantum financial system. So by, on paper, maintaining the fiat status, we could still do business with Israel, with China, with all the countries that use the fiat currency. But we could also, well, not China, Europe mainly, that uses the fiat currency. But we can also, with the gold backing, we can back the stable coins by gold and by the gold and use that to trade with the BRICS nations. So we'll have basically, so essentially America will become economically transgender, where you have either fiat currency countries and gold backed currency countries. America is going to teeter in between both, where we have enough gold to call it a gold backed currency, but we won't call it a gold backed currency. And then eventually, what will happen is that fiat label will fall off and the gold backed currency will take precedence. So now that the deep state is being mopped up, their foot soldiers are being removed, their top players in government are being removed, Trump severing ties with Israel. Now he's making the rounds with Scott Bessent, and they're talking about international trade and international business. We got the tariff revenue coming in, and talks about valuing the gold to match the currency and digitizing some of the currency into stable coins. That sounds to me like we're shifting towards the finalization of the quantum financial system. And if you don't know about the quantum financial system, I have a whole stream on Rumble discussing the quantum financial system that you can go watch and learn about it for yourself. But in a nutshell, the quantum financial system works like this. And shout out to Lies That Bind over on Rumble. Shout out to DJ Cosby. Oh, fuck DJ Cosby. I didn't know what fucking state that was, dude. It was Rhode Island. I called it New Hampshire. Whatever the fuck. I don't live in the fucking Northeast, bro. You that mad over a map? I don't give a fuck about New Hampshire or Rhode Island. I wish I would have seen that comment earlier. DJ Cosby. If you don't like the show, kick rocks, bro. Most of my maps are labeled. The whole Northeast is one big blue cancer spot, and I try not to focus my attention up there, too often. So, sorry if I offended you with my error. A correction would have been nice instead of shit talking. You know what? Let me just go ahead and get you the fuck up out of here. Yeah, I'll just do that. Yeah, I'll do that. I'll just mute you forever so you don't have to come back. Because I'm always open to correction. If I'm wrong, correct me. And I asked, in all fairness, I said I wasn't sure. I was guessing, and I asked. So don't bite my head off, man, or you're going to get your ass blocked. But anyway, in a nutshell, the quantum financial system is a competing system which uses gold-backed digital currency that the BRICS nations are employing. This is why all those African nations are switching to gold. And the gold-backed digital currency is basically going to be an international trade market that isolates all nations that use fiat currency from being able to trade with the BRICS nations. And if you don't know what's so special about the BRICS nations, well, let me tell you. The BRICS nations are the countries where they have the most manufacturing. So they are building everything and producing everything. So everybody is at some point is going to have to buy from them. And because of that, the US also will have to buy from them, and they will have to use the gold-backed stable coins in the quantum financial system to buy from them. So we'll start off kind of, I guess, like I said, walking the line. We'll start off straddling the fence, essentially, which will set the stage for a full transition into the gold-backed currency. Shout out to my sister Joy Miles. She said, Finally catching a live. Appreciate you, Joy. Appreciate you for that Cash App. And shout out to my good brother Lee 14224 on the PayPal. Almost forgot to shout you out, bro. Can't forget you, my brother. And he says, have a great Wednesday show. I appreciate that, man. Thank you for that support. So we got 2 supporters on the board. I would like to get 10, but I'm okay with 5. We got 5 last time. In fact, we got 6 because I want to give a shout out to my sister Zanaya, who hit the PayPal on the replay after the last show. So we got 6. And I believe Joy had hit me prior to that. I'm not sure if I shouted you out for that, Joy, but shout out to you for all that support. Appreciate you guys. So the quantum, it seems, just by the looks of things and the way Trump is moving around with Scott Bessent, it seems like they're doing something with the quantum financial system. And at this stage in the game, I can only assume that they're finalizing the quantum financial system. So Kash Patel has been under fire. Kash Patel has been criticized for using the FBI jet to go see his girlfriend, apparently. And everybody's all up in arms about it. But what you're not hearing is that California is refusing to release financial records tied to the construction of its new Capitol building in Sacramento, a project originally estimated at $500 million in 2018 that's now ballooned to $1.6 billion. That's triple. Oh, that's more than triple. Lawmakers say costs soared due to design updates and inflation. But watchdogs are demanding answers on where the extra $1.1 billion went. Well, we know where that extra $1.1 billion went. It went into the politicians' pockets, of course, because that's what they do. They allocate all this funding for these big government projects, and then they skim off the top. They hire their nephews and their nieces and their family members as the contractors. They overpay them, and then in return for being overpaid, the contractors then offer them a kickback of the money once the funds are dispersed to the contractors. So while everybody's up in arms about Kash Patel using the FBI jet when he's the freaking FBI director, I don't hear anybody batting an eye about $1.1 billion disappearing in California. But this is how full of shit the political establishment is. This is how full of shit they are. Not to mention all the fraud that Doge uncovered. You know, I wish they would have put that much energy behind highlighting the fraud that Doge was discovering, that they put behind calling out Kash Patel, the FBI director, for using the FBI jet. I'm just saying. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm missing the mark on this one. But that's what I think about that. FBI Director Kash Patel, speaking of Kash Patel, says the seizure of all of Nancy Pelosi's office staff records has led to actionable evidence that she orchestrated January 6th. Now, do you guys remember when the seizure of... Oh, shit, shout out to my brother Gary on the PayPal. Let me see what Gary had to say. Gary did not leave a comment, but shout out to you for that support, Gary. We got 3 supporters on the board. We're almost to 5. Once we hit 5, we'll up it to 10, y'all. Appreciate you, Gary. So January 6th, on January 6th, if you guys have been following me that long, and for those of you who haven't, I covered the story where Army Special Forces, they were either Army Special Forces or they were Recon Marines, one or the other. They disguised themselves. They had embedded themselves with Antifa. They had been embedded with Antifa since the George Floyd riots. So to the Antifas that were led into the Capitol to destroy the place and frame Trump supporters, they believe that these Marines, I believe they were Marines, that these Marines were Antifa members as well. So on January 6th, when Antifa disguised themselves as Trump supporters, the Marines also alongside Antifa, disguised themselves as Trump supporters and were able to infiltrate the Capitol because Antifa was working with the corrupted FBI at that time and the Capitol Police to stage the January 6th riots. And when the Antifas were allowed access into the Capitol building by the Capitol Police, the Marines then broke away from the group and entered into congressional offices and started seizing laptops and electronics. And since then, they have been in the custody of the FBI, of the Department of Justice. And now that Kash Patel is there and he has no interest in covering up for Nancy Pelosi and friends, they are now using the evidence that was gathered from those devices that were seized on January 6th to then now prosecute Nancy Pelosi. Salute, Michael Guest. They just random beats I find on YouTube, bro. Several of her staffers were in contact with undercover deep state agents inside the Capitol that day. Patel says a grand jury to hear evidence is forthcoming. It's time for these criminals to pay for their crimes with their freedom. So it seems like Nancy Pelosi is now going to be prosecuted. But the funny thing about it is this is all optics because Nancy Pelosi was already taken into custody on during the fake Joe Biden inauguration. That's when the arrests were happening. And I do have a picture, and I showed that picture several times of Nancy Pelosi being escorted out of the Capitol building, surrounded by female marshals, female U.S. marshals, which indicates VIP arrest. So the FBI going after Nancy Pelosi, this is for the optics. Barnes says, show it again. I'm going to have to go back through the archives and dig that one up. That's an old one. Barnes, you know how old that is. But Nancy Pelosi is now under fire. So her character is going to basically be, what's the word I'm looking for? X'd out of the game, pretty much. Shout out to my brother Arthur for support on the Cash App. He says, support the show or support for the show. Appreciate you, brother. That's 4, y'all. That's 4. We counting up. We're counting up. So we're going to start to see politicians going to jail here soon, I would presume. Where are we at? 21. We're at 21. So, breaking. ICE agents just raided a home in Los Angeles connected to an Iranian trafficking ring. 7 Iranian nationals were arrested at the house, including individuals on the FBI terror watch list. Let's go. So, ICE agents are not only going after the Latinos and the Mexicans and the Latin Americans, they're going after everybody who is in the country illegally or who has legal status but is engaging in criminal activity such as drug trafficking, sex trafficking, human trafficking, fraud, money laundering, and domestic terrorism. So these ICE raids aren't just about getting rid of the illegals. This is actually proof, evidence of what I've been telling you guys this whole time. The ICE raids are also part of an operation to remove the sleeper cells. What do you think this bust was? A sleeper cell. So when I tell you that through the ICE raids, the military and the feds, the DOJ, are rounding up these individuals who are members of these sleeper cells that are awaiting orders to carry out mass casualty events. And again, we just had woo-ah, got you all in check. I used to say that every time we talk about Wuhan, China. Woo-ah, got you got you all sick. Up in the lab, cooking up some shit. Wuhan. Anyway, so you have the airlines shutting down and the massive flight delays, and then the next day you got a plane crash. Sounds to me like sleeper cell activity. And this is why ICE has been so busy. This is why the National Guard deployments are so important. And just because these guys are Iranian does not mean they're not backed by the Zionists. Don't let that fool you, because the Israeli Mossad, they control these terror organizations and these terror groups. They fund them and they control them. In fact, an ISIS commander was captured in Syria, and it turned out that he was an Israeli Mossad officer who had infiltrated ISIS and was a leader in the ISIS group. So just because they're Iranians do not mean they're not serving the Zionists. Now, this is where it gets interesting, right? Former president of Sudan states that the CIA and Mossad are behind Boko Haram and ISIS, which is true. These are also the two main terrorist organizations operating throughout Nigeria. If true, this insinuates Trump is claiming he's going to overthrow the Nigerian government because they won't put a stop to the terrorists he's funding and supporting. Right? But that's a false analysis. That's an incorrect analysis, right? So he's correct about the CIA and the Mossad being behind Boko Haram and ISIS, but saying that Trump is going to overthrow the Nigerian government, that's not the case. Arjun Lal 5898. In your opinion, are the Zios connected to the fallen angels or reptiles? Well, they definitely follow the ways of the demons, of the devil. So I would assume so. I would assume so. But so he's correct about ISIS and Boko Haram, these radical Islamic terrorist groups being ran by the CIA and the Mossad. But what he's wrong about is Trump being the one behind it, because Trump is not friends with the Mossad, and Trump actually had Army Green Berets have a whole shootout in Barcelona, Spain, and in Frankfurt, Germany after the 2021 elections, or after the 2020 elections, between Army Green Berets and the CIA. So parts of the CIA is actually at war with Trump. Meanwhile, other factions of the CIA are loyal to Trump, and that's who's operating in Latin America, undermining the cartels right now. So what Trump is actually planning to do is he's planning to go into Nigeria and stop Boko Haram and ISIS from killing the civilians, because the Nigerian government seems to be in league with Boko Haram and ISIS. Because the Nigerian government is not really doing much to stop these raids and stop these attacks. Let's go to 22. So you got to understand how the chessboard is set up in order to judge whether these statements being made by these public officials are actually accurate statements or mischaracterizations. But the Trump administration is reportedly planning an aggressive intelligence-driven mission against drug cartels in Mexico. This operation could involve U.S. troops and intelligence officers on the ground using drones to target drug labs and cartel leaders. While early training is underway, officials state the deployment is not yet imminent. So Trump is threatening a mass military operation against the cartels in Mexico. He's already got their supply lines from South America and the rest of Latin America cut off through Operation Southcom. And now that they've been cut off and isolated and weakened, essentially, he's going after them with our military in Mexico. I think he should. I agree with this. This is what the war on drugs should have looked like. Not police kicking in Americans' doors and locking up Americans for selling the same dope that the government brought into the community. That was the pseudo war on drugs. That was the war on the Negroes. That's what that was. You flood the black community with dope, and then you start a war on dope. Guess who's gonna have the dope in their pockets? The black folks. So guess who you get to lock up? The black folks. And who did that? Democrats. Of course. Now I have to find slide 23. Did I do 17 yet? Nope, we haven't done 17. So we've been doing a lot of skipping around. All right. So the elections just happened. A bunch of Democrats won. But get this, election machines have reportedly gone down in multiple locations across Cumberland County, New Jersey, as Republicans are outperforming their 2024 turnout by double digits. So Republicans were winning the election, and then the election machines get shut down. Of course. I mean, how else would Democrats win elections? Seriously, how else? How else? Am I missing something? I feel like I'm missing something. All right. So, speaking of what's happening in Sudan, Sudanese army discover UAE weapons supplied to rapid support forces. Now, the rapid support forces are the radical Islamists that are running around killing the Christians and killing the peaceful Muslims. And they're using weapons supplied by the United Arab Emirates. Now, these are not fresh supplied weapons. These are old weapons that had been supplied since the Obama years. And these weapons are now being used by the remnants of Boko Haram and ISIS to carry out mass casualty events in order to try to destabilize these nations that will eventually be joining BRICS in the quantum financial system. This is what those attacks are all about, destabilizing those countries. But Trump's not letting that happen. And the media is trying to blame Trump for it. And now they're going to start blaming the United Arab Emirates. But these weapons were given to these radical Islamists by the United Arab Emirates under different leadership. This happened before Prince bin Salman took over in 2017. And that's the part of the story that people are missing where they get it construed. Just like this fella here, the former president of Sudan, who is basically blaming Trump for Boko Haram and ISIS, which is bullshit. They were supported by CIA and Mossad, who are ran by the deep state, not by Trump. They're loyal to the deep state. Just like that Secret Service agent that Barnes told us about earlier that tried to poison Trump with ricin. They're in the circle, but they're loyal to the deep state. They're part of the government, but they're not loyal to who's in charge of the government. Very important to note. But their players are being removed and they're losing power. They're losing power very rapidly. And we're starting to see their field of influence decrease sharply. People aren't buying the bullshit anymore. Shout out to Welder Mike over on Rumble. He says, I found you 3 days ago. Great show. Help keeping me centered. I have a link I would like to share with you on the quantum financial system that is brought to us by the Dove of Oneness. My email address, Welder Mike, is in the description box. It's citizenman87@gmail.com. You can send that link right on over there, my brother. So we got a lot of interesting stuff happening, man. A lot of interesting shit happening, but people aren't seeing it. They're not seeing it. Everybody thinks Trump is still cool with Israel. Check this shit out. A source in the administration is telling me that Trump has gone nuclear on Benjamin Netanyahu and is no longer his friend. Well, he never was his friend, for that matter. This comes after Netanyahu disregarded Trump's peace deal only hours after it was announced. President Trump is also now posting about the massive protests happening in Israel right now against their government. And you see what Trump's doing here in this picture? All that wall kissing and Jew hugging and Jew loving that Trump's been doing. He was bullshitting them. He was bullshitting them. Trump leans more Christian. You know why? How many times have we seen Trump kissing the wall? How many pictures are there of Trump kissing the wall? There's one, right? How many times have we seen Trump surrounded by Christians, Christian pastors, and Christians, prominent Christians, laying hands on him and praying for him? There's multitudes of pictures of Trump doing this ritual because it's a ritual. It's a Christian ritual. And we all know the Zionists hate Christians. So as Trump severs ties with the Zionists, he's surrounding himself with the Christians. And that's why he's so vocal about speaking out about the genocide, particularly of the Christians in Sudan and Nigeria. Because this is all part of his taking a stance, positioning his stance against Israel, against the Zionists. Okay? This is why he's engaging in this Christian ritual. He's sending a signal. And honestly, Trump needs all the prayers he can get because Israel is the big boss. And it seems like he's now aiming his sights at the big boss. Trump is posting images of the massive crowd in Israel protesting Netanyahu's government, urging him to sign Trump's peace deal. Netanyahu is backed in a corner and is the only one with incentive to sabotage this because his corruption trials are waiting. And this is what Donald Trump posted on Truth Social. Huge protest over in Israel. Huge protest. And again, these protests have been going on since the genocide in Gaza has been going on. So now it seems like the forces within Israel that are in opposition to Netanyahu and his agenda, Trump is now aligning himself or at least showing support and solidarity with those forces. Just like I told you he would. He will eventually part ways with Israel. And I told you he would. And it's happening. We're watching it happen. We're literally watching it happen. So everything I said was going to happen, we're now watching it happen. No problem, Welder Mike. He says, thank you, my friend. No problem, brother. You see, it doesn't take any special skill or talent or superpower to do what I do. It just takes the ability to read the chessboard. That's it. That's all it takes. You just got to be able to read the chessboard and see the possible moves that can be made and then decide which move is going to be made. And sometimes you'll be right, sometimes you'll be wrong, but most times you'll be right. Now, this one is interesting too, this article right here, because this seems to confirm exactly what I've been saying. These military deployments were pre-planned long in advance. They're only now being deployed because the trigger events have occurred in order to justify the deployments. Trump's National Guard deployments aren't random. They were planned years ago. All right, so let's take a look at that article. I got the link pulled up over here. Here we go. So Trump's National Guard deployments were planned years ago. President Trump's deployments of National Guard troops to U.S. cities have outraged his political rivals. tested legal precedents and led to nationwide protests. The courts are weighing in on their legality, but if successful, they could also fulfill a long-running administration goal of employing America's military to aid in the mass deportation of immigrants, you mean illegal aliens, they're not fucking immigrants, without legal status, according to an NPR review of past comments from Trump and his allies. It's a move that would stray significantly from past federal use of the Guard, challenging laws that dictate how the U.S. military can be used domestically. And with the 2026 midterms looming, some experts worry Guard troops could even be used as a tool of systematic voter suppression and intimidation. Well, that's their claim. But what the Guard has been used for in the past, and I've shown you guys these articles from militarytimes.com and from army.mil, which is the Army themselves, reporting that National Guard soldiers will be dressed as quote unquote neighbors, which means plain clothes, undercover, and they will be monitoring the polling stations to catch the people committing voter fraud. That's what they were doing, and that's what they will continue to do, and that's what they'll be doing this midterm. And I believe that's what they're doing. I believe that's what they're doing. That's what they did these last few elections, where these Democrats won by fraud, in my opinion. What about Stock says, what's wrong? I don't know. What's wrong with what? What about Stock says what? What's wrong with who? Please elaborate. Trump has sent troops into 4 Democratic-led cities and threatened to send them to several more, claiming they are needed to crack down on crime and protect federal immigration facilities and officers. Those deployments and the White House's rhetoric around them have regularly conflated violent crime and illegal immigration into a single crisis, blurring the lines around the role of the Guard and federal agents. Well, no, because if both entities are being deployed, they're obviously being deployed to address both issues. So it's not necessarily conflating the two issues. It's simply addressing both issues simultaneously. You don't have to conflate two issues in order to address two issues. Taken one at a time, the deployments can seem random or fickle. Trump will often muse about sending troops into a city only to backtrack his comments and focus on a different city days later. Yeah, he's putting them on notice. But the president, what's up, D. Allen? But the president and several others in his inner circle, most notably Stephen Miller, a senior aide to Trump in his first term, and now Trump's right-hand man on immigration, have long talked about using the National Guard to help with mass deportations and immigration raids, despite U.S. laws broadly preventing the military from being used for domestic policing. Well, remember when Q said certain laws have been pre-lifted to facilitate the use of military forces on U.S. soil? Well, those laws have been pre-lifted because we're in a state of declared war. And that declared war is a domestic war now because we've been infiltrated by foreign entities trying to steal our elections and usurp the power of the federal government. So we're fighting a war of infiltration. To get around those laws, both Trump and Miller have talked about invoking the Insurrection Act, which allows the president to deploy the military within the U.S. in certain situations. Legal experts, activists, and watchdog groups worry that Trump administration could fundamentally change the way the military is used on U.S. soil, specifically raising concerns about the upcoming 2026 midterm elections and what armed troops on the streets could mean as voters cast ballots. Well, what it would mean is that the people who cheat and steal elections won't be stealing elections. Laying the groundwork. Much of Trump's campaign ahead of the 2024 election was focused on drumming up anti-immigrant sentiment and pushing his plan for mass deportation. Well, it's not anti-immigrant sentiment because, funny enough, legal immigrants are in support of the mass deportations as well. So it ain't anti-immigrant sentiment. It's seeing a need to enforce our immigration laws and deport illegal aliens as they're described in the actual legislation. Have He vowed several times on the campaign trail that he would launch the largest deportation operation in American history. In his first term, Trump and his administration had similar ambitions, but struggled to scale up infrastructure and manpower needed to carry out the goal. Right, that's because in Trump's first term, he was still dealing with the infiltration of his administration. In a Time magazine interview in April of 2024, the then candidate Trump was asked specifically if his plan included the use of the U.S. military. I can see myself using the National Guard, and if necessary, I'd have to go a step further. We have to do whatever we have to do to stop the problem we have, Trump responded. And it was crazy, right? What's crazy about all this is the very people that were advocating for the illegal aliens to come into the country and create this problem are the very people that are now upset at Trump for the measures he's having to take to rectify this problem. And the crazy thing is, as dissatisfied or as displeased as they are with Trump's actions now in terms of deploying the military, none of this would have happened if they would have listened to Trump and let him build a fucking wall. None of this would have happened if they would have let Trump build the damn wall and secure the border. There would be no need for mass deportations or military deployments. So they created this situation, and now they're mad at Trump for trying to fix the situation. Almost seems like they don't want to fix the situation, which would make perfect sense, because if they're dead set on having a new slave class and black folks ain't voting Democrat in the larger numbers as they used to, well, they need a new round of voters. And they have to be in the slave class because everything the Democrats propose to their voters involves free handouts. And free handouts is only enticing to the impoverished and the people at the bottom, the slave class. Because if everybody was productive and making a living for themselves, free handouts wouldn't be so appealing. So the Democrats need to have an army of poor people behind them. That's their constituency. But anyway, using the National Guard for immigration enforcement is an idea that Miller had talked about publicly in the years before. In 2023, Miller appeared on the late right-wing activist Charlie Kirk's podcast to talk about how mass deportations under Trump's hopeful second term could work. In terms of personnel, you go to the red state governors and you say, give us your National Guard. We will deputize them as immigration enforcement officers, Miller explained. The Alabama National Guard is going to arrest illegal aliens in Alabama and the Virginia National Guard in Virginia. Miller doesn't specify how that would be legal under U.S. law. The military can't be used for domestic policing unless authorized by the Constitution or Congress. For domestic-run states that don't comply, Miller said the federal government would simply send the National Guard from a nearby Republican state. Right, because if the Democratic states don't comply, that means they are working in tandem with these foreign invaders. And if they're working with foreign invaders, they cannot be relied upon to remove these foreign invaders and the sleeper cells that came with them. So thus, they cannot be trusted. They must be viewed as sympathizers of this foreign enemy infiltration, and their authority must be superseded by that of the military. That's the way it works. Because remember, we're dealing with infiltration. The deployments. In recent months, the Trump administration has deployed Guard troops to states against the wishes of their Democratic governors, including sending troops from Texas into Illinois. The administration said their purpose was to protect federal immigration facilities and officers. Those deployments are tied up in court challenges. And while the deployments are tied up in court challenges, the soldiers are still there. Now, these National Guard deployments, this is all surface stuff that they're touching on in this article. But these National Guard units also have special operations units attached to them. And these special operators are running the night raids. So while the guards patrol the streets at night and by day and night, the special operations units by day are taking faces and names, doing intel, locating, finding these people. And then by night, they're doing night raids and snatch and grabs on these organizers and these funders and these coordinators who are helping to lead these riots. I got a pair of those boots. Miles Taylor, former chief of staff in the Department of Homeland Security during Trump's first term, worked closely with Miller. He's since become a vocal critic of the president and his policies. You see, he worked in Trump's administration in his first term, and now he's criticizing Trump. What did I tell you? Trump's first term was plagued with infiltrators. Taylor says he's not surprised to see Miller's plan coming to fruition. Trump was deeply differential to Stephen, and I think you've seen that with a vastly more empowered Stephen Miller in a second term, says Taylor, an author and commentator. Taylor says that during Trump's first term, the president was talking publicly about, or wasn't talking publicly about, using the U.S. military for immigration enforcement, but it was something that was discussed behind closed doors. Oh, that's Miles Taylor? Yeah, he looks like a cuck. He definitely looks like a liberal cuck. Like, he looks like he's got a gerbil stuck up his ass right now. I can remember in meetings with him in the Oval Office or on Air Force One or at the border, him starting to bring up the idea of using the United States military to solve the problem, he says. It wasn't something that Trump just talked about in 2017, the Associated Press reported on a memo it obtained from DHS outlining a draft proposal to use the National Guard to round up unauthorized immigrants throughout the U.S. At the time, the White House denied it, saying there was no such plan. Taylor says there very much was, but it was also more than that. It was the invocation of the Insurrection Act to deputize the military to enforce domestic law, to basically become a domestic police force, he says, noting that this particular idea was something that troubled him and several other staffers. So let me get this straight, Miles Taylor. Mass numbers of foreign criminals flooding into the border, raping and killing American men, women, and children, that doesn't bother you. Trump using the military to get rid of these scumbags, that bothers you. Got it. Definitely have a gerbil stuck up your ass. You must have a gerbil stuck up your ass to be that fucking ignorant. It rocked us to the core, he says. Trump invoking the Insurrection Act would legally allow for the military to act as police on U.S. soil, to carry out immigration enforcement, but possibly other enforcement too, according to legal experts. Yeah, like arresting the traitors and rounding up the people that are aiding and abetting the illegals. Yes, most definitely. NPR asked the White House about potential plans to deputize the Guard for law enforcement and to use the Insurrection Act, but it did not directly respond to those questions, instead criticizing Taylor and NPR. Spokeswoman Abigail Jackson also referenced Trump's highly successful operations to drive down violent crime in American cities. Good job, Abigail Jackson. Project 2025. The broader themes of these National Guard deployments are also embedded in Project 2025, a conservative action plan written by the Heritage Foundation after Trump's first term that's more than 900 pages long. Trump has incorporated many of its policies and authors into his second administration. So much so that the report's architect, Russell Vought, is the head of the White House's Office of Management and Budget. Matt Dallek, a professor at the George Washington University who studies the American conservative movement, says that Project 2025 essentially opens the door for Trump's National Guard deployments, particularly to Democratic-led cities, without explicitly calling for them. The subtext of Project 2025 is to take any and all steps at the executive level to go into cities and states to enact the priority, which is to root out illegal immigration, Dallek says. The idea of bullying states and cities into following orders from the president is a key part of the text, says David Graham, a journalist for The Atlantic, who also wrote a book on the project. So is the use of the military. Now, here's the thing about Trump and Project 2025. Project 2025 is simply comprised of many of the things that Trump supports and Trump wants to do. Not everything, but many of them. So you're gonna see Trump doing things that seem to align with Project 2025, but are actually tenets of Trump's own Agenda 47. And bringing Russell Vought into his administration, who happens to be one of the authors of Project 2025, means nothing except Trump now knows that Russell Vought is on his side and is less likely to double cross him because he agrees with Trump's agenda. That's all that means. But of course, because the media and the left-wing establishment has made such a big deal about Project 2025 with all the doom and gloom and the fear-mongering, now NPR is basically trying to grasping at straws to draw the parallels. There's this idea in Project 2025 and among the authors that the military is just an underused resource for policing immigration, Graham says, noting that often illegal immigration is presented as a national security problem. Well, it is. Foreign nationals entering your nation is a national security problem, is it not? He says the report's authors believe that the U.S. has this huge resource of armed people, and we're not doing anything with it. And we need to use it to secure the border beyond mass deportation. In recent weeks, Trump has talked about invoking the Insurrection Act often, especially in regard to deploying the National Guard. Earlier this month, he said that he was allowed to invoke it if the courts deny his deployments in places like Portland, Oregon, or Chicago, where prosecutors and federal judges have questioned the need for troops on the ground. So the Insurrection Act would be invoked if these crooked courts and these crooked Democrats in these corrupted states keep trying to block Trump from deploying the National Guard. If he invokes the Insurrection Act, that means all their heads are on the chopping block, and they will now be viewed and treated as traitors. Trump invoking the Insurrection Act to allow troops to help with immigration enforcement is also something that Stephen Miller has talked about. He told the New York Times back in 2023, President Trump will do whatever it takes. That possibility has both legal experts and immigration advocates worried, and these immigration advocates are aiders and abettors of the illegals, especially about the implications it could have for Americans at large. Oh, so they're more concerned about Trump removing the illegals and how it will affect Americans, not how having the illegals here, sucking up all the resources and inflating the crime rates is affecting Americans. No, they don't care about that. See how full of shit these people are? Kisa Matos, president of the National Immigration Law Center, an immigration rights advocacy group, says it has her worried about the upcoming 2026 midterm elections and what the presence of troops might mean for voters as they cast ballots. Who gives a fuck? What I have said repeatedly is that the path to authoritarianism in this country is being built on the backs of immigrants. They will begin with immigrants. They will not end with immigrants, she says. And there goes the fear mongering right there. Haven't we heard that a lot from the left and from the Democrats? When Trump is done deporting the illegals, black people, he coming for y'all, black people. How many times you heard that stupid shit? How many times have you heard that dumb shit? Because it's dumb shit. It is dumb shit. That's what it is. It is shit and it is stupid. But this is why they sell you this is why they harp on the doom and gloom. I don't know if you guys notice, but a lot of so-called truth tellers out there, they tell you some truth, but then they spin it as if we're in a hopeless situation. The establishment has total power and you'll never win. And Trump is one of them, and he has to be one of them because there's no possible way that a president could oppose the establishment. You know, all that fear mongering and doom and gloom. It's a form of demoralization. And why people can't see the truth. This is Yuri Bezmenov, 1939 to 1993. That's how long he lived. Was a KGB informant and disinformation expert who defected to Canada. He is best remembered for his anti-communist lectures and books in the 1980s. Exposure to true information does not matter anymore. A person who is demoralized is unable to assess true information. And this is what the doom and gloom and all the fear mongering and all the Trump bad rhetoric is about. It's about demoralization, because when people like me speak and I start making sense of the things that Trump is doing and Trump has done, that's put we the people in an advantageous position to defeat the deep state, people can't believe it. And you should see the comments that they leave me. Trump is a traitor. Trump is one of them. Trump is owned by Israel. Trump bad. Trump kissed the wall. Trump fuck hoes. What Trump do with his dick and what he didn't do with his dick. All that bullshit is a form of demoralization. And they do that in order to cast doubt on people like me who are giving you the real information and the real rundown of what's really happening and the fact that patriots are winning. The fact that the deep state is losing. They need you to keep believing that the deep state is winning so you'll be less likely to resist. It's a form of demoralization. Brother Sanchez is an expert at this demoralization. That's what it's about. And once you become totally demoralized by buying into the Trump bad rhetoric and believing that Trump is down with the deep state, there's nothing good that Trump could do for the people that you would recognize and see the benefits of, because everything Trump does now has to be for the deep state and the Illuminati one world government agenda. And with that demoralized mentality now, when Trump sends out those false signals and those false leaks to retain those in DC, and he plays the role of going along to get along, the doom and gloomers, they grasp onto that. They hold on to that. Like they hold on to Operation Warp Speed. When in reality, Operation Warp Speed is what defeated the mandate, the vaccine mandate. Because Operation Warp Speed forced the vaccine companies to put out the vaccine in 12 months, in 1 year, rather than the 3 to 10 years it normally takes. Thus, the vaccine can't be mandated because it remains experimental. But everybody's mad at Trump about warp speed, like Trump could stop the vaccine companies from putting out the fucking vaccine. These are privately owned hospitals. These are privately owned vaccine companies. These are private doctors. These are private businesses. Trump can't stop them. He doesn't have the power to as the president. But what he can do is he can take control of the agenda and undermine it. And that's what Operation Warp Speed was about, undermining their ability to mandate the vaccine. And guess what? The Supreme Court had the legal grounds to strike down the employer mandate because they can't mandate an experimental medicine. But again, the doom and gloomers, they will never see that. So they're literally living every day without the vaccine mandate thanks to Operation Warp Speed, but they're mad at Trump about Operation Warp Speed because they've bought into the doom and gloom and they've become demoralized. This is how demoralization works. It makes you believe nothing good can ever come of this. So anything good that comes of this is too good to be true. It's like being in a relationship after being hurt over and over again. You become demoralized. So that person you're with, no matter what good things they do for you, no matter how much they bend over backwards for you, no matter what they do to earn your trust and earn your respect, they never get your trust and they never get your respect because you're dealing with a demoralized person that couldn't see the truth if it slapped them in the fucking face. The facts tell him nothing, even if I shower him with information, which is what I do, with authentic proof. with documents and pictures, he will refuse to believe it. Is that not what I do? And is that not the response I get from the doom and gloomers? That's the tragedy of the situation of demoralization. They believe they've already lost, so why fight? What better way to neutralize your enemy than to demoralize them to the point where they don't even see the need to fight anymore? How do you think the racist Jews and liberals during the time of slavery were able to keep black people enslaved for so long? Demoralization. That's what the buck breaking was about. Demoralization. That's what the whole bedwenching business was about. Demoralization. That's what the torture rituals was about. Demoralization. So it could be 100 slaves on the plantation and one slave master. And all 100 of those slaves will see that slave master as the supreme power, and we cannot gang up and jump on this motherfucker because we've been demoralized to think it's a fight we can't win. So we won't fight. Even though the facts of the Haitian Revolution, where they ousted the French and freed themselves, the Guyanese Revolution, where Kofi and the rest of the slaves ousted the British and freed themselves, the Cuban Revolution, and all the other revolutions around the world where slaves fought and freed themselves, none of those facts mattered to the demoralized American Negro slave because they were so demoralized that they accepted their existence as slaves. Demoralization. Demoralization neutralizes the fight in you. Shout out to my brother Keith for the Cash App. So we're at 5 supporters, y'all. We're at 5 supporters. If we can get 5 more on the board to make 10, that'd be great. That would be awesome, and I really appreciate it. So you get what I'm saying, guys, right? You get what I'm saying. This is why the fake truthers give you the doom and gloom. They give you a little bit of truth so they can gain your trust, and then they start showering you with the doom and gloom because the doom and gloom appeals to your emotions. And then the emotional side of your brain starts to operate and it overrides the logical side of your brain. So the facts no longer matter. You don't like Trump. Trump is bad. So the fact that Trump is cleaning up the mess that the Democrats caused and the deep state caused doesn't matter to you because Trump is one of them. So we're watching government officials get indicted and go to jail, which we've been dying to fucking see. We're watching the illegals get deported after 4 years of watching them flood into our fucking country. We're watching Trump openly severing ties with Israel. We're watching Trump mop up the deep state sleeper cells so we don't fall victim to mass casualty events and terrorist attacks. But nope, Trump bad. Trump's with the deep state. Trump is one of them. Trump, ain't no hope in Trump. Don't put your faith in Trump. Trump ain't going to save America. Trump is helping to destroy America. No, you doom and gloom motherfuckers are helping to destroy America because you're working for the fucking establishment that's gung-ho on destroying America. And that's why all your political streams are attacking the one man that's trying to get rid of the deep state that has destroyed America. They say Trump sold out America. That's bullshit. How the fuck would Trump sell out America when America was already sold out when he got there? How is that possible? How is it possible to sell out some shit that's already been fucking sold? Huh? You sound stupid. But that's that demoralization. It keeps you stuck in ignorance, in emotional ignorance, or emotionally driven ignorance, demoralization. That's why it's always some fear-mongering shit. Oh, they're gonna have digital ID. Oh, they're gonna send the military to force vaccinate everybody. Oh, Trump is gonna send out the military, and when they're done with the Latinos, they're gonna come get you, black people. That's fear-mongering. That's demoralization. And the people that follow these fear-mongers that are allowing themselves to be demoralized, you think that person is doing you a favor by telling you the truth, but they're not. What they're doing is they're killing the fighting spirit within you by telling you it ain't worth fighting for. That's what they're doing. They're neutralizing you. And that message is usually coupled with don't vote. That's another form of demoralization, because we know there's been tons and tons of voter fraud and election fraud, which made it in a lot of cases where the people voted one way, but the establishment fraudulently put in somebody else. They fraudulently swayed it the other way. So the gloom and doomers would capitalize on that and use that as a form of demoralization. Ain't no point in voting, don't vote. And they always like to say that to the people that are at least smart enough to know not to support Democrats. So because they're being encouraged to ignore their own politics, because there's plenty of Republicans that hold the values they hold, that support the policies that they would like to see put in place. But because they're being told to ignore their politics, the left gets the upper hand. The left gets to play on the emotional crowd and get their support. They get to play on the racist crowd with the racial narratives and get their support. So the fear mongering and the gloom and doom about voting, about not voting because of the rigged elections, that's helping to serve the establishment too, because no amount of rigging of the elections could override the majority of American votes. But not every American that's eligible to vote votes. Only about 10%, if that, of eligible voters in America actually vote. If every eligible voter in America actually voted, the fraud would evaporate. It would collapse under the weight of the will of the people. But if the people don't exercise their will, the fraud gets upheld. Thus, the deep state gets to stay in power. So anybody telling you in your country, don't vote and don't participate in your politics, they are in full support of the foreign infiltrators who have the intention of infiltrating your government and usurping the political power of your country to use it against you. They're leading you into a burning house, essentially. And this is what sets me apart from those gloom and doomers. Because, yeah, I give you the bad news, but I give you the good news too. When Biden won the 2020 election with all the fraud, there was a lot of gloom and doom going around. America's finished. There's going to be a civil war. Blah, blah, fucking blah. And what did I tell y'all? It's a fake inauguration. It's a fake presidency. A bunch of bullshit is going to happen. But Trump's going to come back in 2024 and start reversing all that shit. And the reason for allowing all that bullshit to happen is, one, make the deep state players comfortable so they expose themselves. And two, cause some pain amongst the population so the people who voted for and supported these Democrats could see the mess they created by voting for and supporting these Democrats. It was a learning experience. And unfortunately, most people still haven't learned. That demoralization is a powerful weapon, I'll tell you that. How do you think about this. How do you think they were able to push abortion on so many women and get so many women to agree that murdering their own child is okay and justifiable? Demoralization, was it not? Well, you can't afford to take care of that child, right? You can't afford to take care of that child. You don't have a stable job. The father's not in his life. You don't have a support system. You have goals and a career plan that'll be derailed if you have this child and become a mother. Demoralization. Demoralization. That's why the news is always pushing doom and gloom. It's demoralization. That's the tragedy of the situation of demoralization. Once people's morals have been debased, education becomes indoctrination. We have that. Entertainment becomes hypnotism. We have that. Remember the whole Trump bad narrative? Not only were they pushing it on the news, but they were also pushing that propaganda in TV shows and movies, right? The bad guy was always some old white conservative male. Criminals become leaders. Right. Like your Umar Johnsons, your Tariq Nasheeds, your Al Sharptons. Criminals become leaders, your Gavin Newscombs, Nancy Pelosi's, Chuck Schumer's. Criminals become leaders and lies become truth. Trump's a racist. There's people out there that completely forgot the last 20 years of life and genuinely believe that Trump is a racist. Lies become truth. Many believe their leaders have given them the whole truth and nothing but the truth, so they feel no need to question their programming. Now, a funny thing, right? There's a clip because they were in conjunction with calling Trump a racist. They were calling him a homophobe too. And there was this clip going around where Trump was asking, Trump was sitting at a desk in the corporate boardroom. I believe it was on The Apprentice, if I'm not mistaken. And there was a black guy there at the table with everybody. And Trump was asking each person, questions about themselves. And everybody was answering the questions. And then he got to the black guy, and the black guy happened to be gay. Now, he wasn't like zesty and, broke-wristed. He was a masculine man, but he was a gay man. And Trump asked him in the board meeting, he said, "Are you gay?" And the man says, "Yes, I'm a gay man." And Trump goes immediately, he goes, "You're fired." And they spun that as if Trump just fired that man because he said he was gay. So Trump hates gays. Trump's a homophobe. Mind you, Trump has appointed several gay people to his administration. They just don't they just don't put that at the forefront of who they are. But in case you want to know why Trump fired that man for saying that he's gay, he didn't fire him because he was gay. He fired that man because he demonstrated a lack of professional business etiquette. What do you mean, citizen man? Well, in the professional world, proper business etiquette dictates that you do not discuss what you do in your bedroom at the job. Charleston White actually talked about this at length in some of his older interviews. If you're on a job and you're working for a corporate entity and you overhear any of your coworkers having a sexual conversation of any kind, whether it be gay, it be straight, whatever it is, as long as it's of a sexual nature and you're within earshot, you can sue that company for sexual harassment because you're being bombarded with all this sexual stuff and this personal information from your colleagues that you do not need to know and is not pertinent to the job. It's a distraction. And not only is it a distraction, it's a distraction that can possibly lead to inappropriate behavior in the workplace. Because if people get comfortable talking about their sexuality in the workplace, they'll get even more comfortable expressing their sexuality in the workplace. So why did Trump fire the guy for lack of proper business etiquette? Because he answered the question incorrectly. When Trump asked him if he was gay, what he should have said is, and at the time he wasn't President Trump, he really was Mr. Trump. The correct answer would have been, "Mr. Trump, with all due respect, I do not wish to discuss my personal business in this private setting, but I'll be happy to discuss it with you in private if you like." That would be the correct answer. That's why Trump fired the gay guy. He didn't fire him because he was gay. He fired him because he demonstrated a lack of proper business etiquette, which means he would have been bad for the company. Which means if Trump hired him and he was working at the company and he was having a conversation about how he's gay and some other individual at the company overheard the conversation, Trump could be sued for allowing sexual harassment in the workplace. So that man openly expressing his homosexuality in the fucking board meeting could cost Trump money. That's why he fired him. He didn't fire him because he was gay. He fired him because he was a fucking idiot. That's why he fired him. Jesus Christ. I don't know why I'm so pissed off. I don't know why that pisses me off. Well, I do know why it pisses me off so much. Because People who didn't see that for what it was, they themselves demonstrate a lack of proper business etiquette. And with this widespread lack of proper business etiquette, and you look at the rate of failing small businesses and unsuccessful people in this country, you start to see how the lack of knowledge is at the root of the majority of the economic suffering. Because 90% of the people that were up in arms saying Trump fired that guy because he was gay and Trump's a homophobe, 90% of those motherfuckers are either broke or living paycheck to paycheck. 90% of them. They have zero business acumen. They're worker bees, and they'll be worker bees for the rest of their lives. They'll never have, they have no aspirations of rising beyond a good job. They don't want to build nothing for themselves because they can't. Because if you can't figure out that talking about your sexuality openly on the job is a bad fucking idea, you're lucky you even have a job, you stupid son of a bitch. But all that is a part of demoralization. Demoralization. Spreading false messages, disinformation. You see, Yuri Bezmenov was a KGB disinformation expert. And they really used that scenario from The Apprentice to try to paint Trump as a homophobe. But Trump wasn't being a homophobe. Trump was being a good businessman. Trump was acting in the best interest of his company. And just so you guys know, if you're a W-2 employee and you got gay coworkers that openly talk about their sexuality, you can go to, I believe it's OSHA, and you can file a sexual harassment claim against your employer and probably make about $50,000 to $20,000 off of that sexual harassment claim. Now, if you can record it, oh, you got a slam dunk case. You got a slam dunk fucking case. But that went off topic a little bit, just a tad. But I had to break that down for you guys because I'm pretty sure there's plenty of people here that could use that bit of information, and it may be beneficial to them sometime in the future because maybe you work at a job and it sucks and they're not treating you well. Well, now you got a way out. Now you got a way out. You get that rainbow motherfucker to start running his mouth, and then you sue the company. That's how you do it. That's how you do it. Because your work environment is supposed to be a safe environment and a professional environment. And sexual conversations are not conducive to a safe professional environment. Because people don't feel safe around perverts. And there's nothing professional about perversion. You see how that works? Now, the last thing I wanted to touch on, I think we're gonna close it out early tonight. We did get 5 supporters on the board, so shout out to you guys for the support. Let me check the Venmo to make sure I'm not missing anybody, because Venmo be playing games. Now, I know asking for 5 more supporters is probably a bit of a stretch, but I'm going to ask anyway. We're at 5. If we can get 5 more, that would be awesome. What up, Captain Wronghole? Now, this demoralization and people refusing to believe the facts, this is what's going on with people when it comes to flat Earth. And I do a lot of streams discussing flat Earth and my theory on flat Earth and exposing lies that the scientific establishment tells us. There's a plethora of videos on Instagram of the fake space station and clear anomalies that show that they are not in natural zero gravity. And it's all being faked and staged. I got probably hundreds of streams by now going through all the fake science, debunking all the fake science, showing the discrepancies, showing the shit that don't make sense, and then comparing it to the flat earth theory and how much sense it actually makes. But people have become so demoralized that they can't even believe. They become so demoralized that in spite of knowing that the government has been lying to us all our lives, they can't seem to wrap their heads around the fact that it's quite possible that our government has been lying to us about the very world that we live in. And most can't understand why. Well, there's a spiritual reason why they would tell that lie. There's a physical reason why they would tell that lie. And there's also a psychological reason why they would tell that lie. The psychological reason is demoralization. Make you believe that you're trapped on this spinning ball in outer space that you can't get out of. And resources are limited. So now we have to fight over them. That's demoralization. That's the psychology behind the lie. What was it? It was spiritual, physical, and psychological. So the physicality behind the lie is this. They get to lie to us, pretend that natural resources are finite because we're on this spinning ball in outer space. Thus, as long as they control the resources, they get to tell us whatever they want to tell us, and they get to choose whatever price they sell these resources for, because scarcity causes increased prices. So now they get to hoard and monopolize all the resources of the earth and sell them back to us for a profit in exchange for our enslavement. That's the physical reason for telling that lie. And of course, the spiritual reason is quite simple. If in fact the flat earth cosmology is the true creation of the one true God, the one true grand creator, then making us believe in a spinning ball that was created by Satanists is getting us to pay homage to a false creation, or getting us to acknowledge a false creation. Thus, when we pay homage to the creator, we're actually paying homage to Satan, who is the spiritual father of the Satanists who created the globe. So the globe was created by satanic worshipers. I guess to keep it short, it was created by Satan. So if you believe the creation is the globe and you worship the creator, you're worshiping Satan. So there's your spiritual reason for telling the lie, the physical reason for telling the lie, and the psychological reason for telling the lie. And it all amounts to demoralization. You're worshiping Satan without even knowing it. So now you're becoming spiritually ineffective. You're being extorted. So now you become financially ineffective. And you're being pitted against one another for these finite resources. So now you have no way of unifying. Thus, as long as you stay divided, you can remain conquered and ineffective. But unlocking the flat earth truth gets you away from worshiping Satan and worshiping the true creator, because now you understand the truth of the creation, right? The establishment can no longer fool you with false scarcity and extort you for the resources, because now you're of the understanding that there are more resources out there and you're lying. I mean, we spent our entire lives believing that diamonds were so expensive and so rare. Come to find out, there's a fucking surplus of diamonds on the market, and they're probably cheaper than cubic zirconia when you go buy from the source. That type of shit. And then, of course, the psychological part of pitting us against one another keeps us divided, makes us easier to be conquered. But the facts are the facts. So before you allow your demoralized mind to cause you to reject these facts, just take a look for a second. Real life experiment surface reflection, curved surface. So there's a curved surface, right? And that's how the light reflects on the curved surface. It stops where the curve climaxes. On a flat surface, the light continues to reflect. On the earth, that's what we see on the ocean. If the earth were curved, the sunlight would not reflect straight across the ocean like that. It would stop where the curvature would be. So that's one proof that the earth is flat. The next is that NASA has been lying to us. Let me see if I got those slides. I hope I do. There we go. I wonder, why does NASA, a space agency, have one of the world's largest film set studios among its facilities? Not only that, they're the largest consumer of helium. And helium is what they use to launch their communication devices into high altitude. And those communication devices are what we so affectionately call satellites, which they make us believe are floating in outer space, when in fact they're just floating up at high altitudes in the sky, communicating, of course, with ground-based towers. So demoralization is a very, very powerful weapon, and it's extremely dangerous. And it's constantly being used by the establishment to brainwash us into neutralizing ourselves and not taking a stand against them. You know, part of the reason why the deep state's been winning so much? You ever heard the saying, if God is with us, who can be against us? Well, the establishment has been winning against us because we haven't had God with us, because we've been worshiping Satan by believing in that bullshit ass globe. Think about that. Just think about that. And so many people believe in it, and they're so demoralized and brainwashed that the minute you bring it up, they get into their emotions and then they start to get nasty. Like I always say, you want to see a conservative act like a brain dead liberal? Tell them the earth is flat and watch them freak the fuck out on you. Call you all kind of names and all kind of shit. Just like the leftists do, no different. And they're so demoralized and lack self-awareness that they don't even see it. They don't even see it enough to control their emotions and offer a reasonable response. They don't see it. And it's a sad thing. And you see what Citizen Man is here to do. Guys, make sure y'all hit that like button. We got 71 watching on YouTube and 55 likes. That is unacceptable. And you guys know that. Hit that like button. What Citizen Man does is I try to reverse that demoralization by, one, teaching you about the power you actually hold as an American. Two, guiding you back to your true spiritual roots, the spirituality of your ancestors, not the paganism and all that bullshit, but understanding the true creation to try to get you one step closer to the creator. This is why all these churches out here are false churches, because they all believe in the globe, and the globe is a creation of Satanists. So they believe in Satan's creation. So they can be as holy as they want to be. But if they think they live in a creation that was created by Satanists, they're worshiping Satan. And that's why it's been such a spiritual struggle, because people are walking around out here physically alive, but spiritually dead. And because they're spiritually dead, anything doom and gloomish that seems to confirm their spiritual lifelessness, they'll latch onto it. They'll accept it. It's sad to watch, but it has to be done, because people have to be broken out of that trance and violently awakened out of their sleep. Because when the people wake up and realize, hey, all I have to do is show up on election day and cast a ballot for the guy that says he wants to uphold the Constitution, and life will literally get better. Life will get better. That's all it takes. Why do you think the Democrat cities have been under so much economic turmoil? Because the people that are smart enough to know the Democrats are fucking up shit are still too dumb to realize that amongst the Republicans, not all the Republicans, but amongst the Republicans, you will find people that will get in there and adequately represent their constituency. But instead, they fall for the doom and gloom and they say, oh, there's no point in voting. So it's either vote Democrat or don't vote at all. So the Republicans never get a chance. And so these cities remain under Democratic control, and the Democrats continue to run them into the ground. And look at Mamdani. Mamdani got elected mayor of New York City. Who the fuck is Mamdani and where the hell did he even come from? But idiots went out and voted for him. And watch what happens to New York City in a year. I guarantee you. Now, let me be generous. Within 2 years, I guarantee you, right, coming up to the 2028 presidential election, most of New York City is going to look like that movie Warriors, how New York looked back in the 80s. A trash dump. Because Mamdani's proposed tax policy, that tax the rich bullshit, it's already causing the wealthier people to take their money and leave New York. Not just New York City, but New York State. So that tax the rich policy is going to fail because there will be no rich people to tax. Watch, I give it 2 years, and New York City will go belly up. Right, he's only going to tax them 94%. American Savage said, did you see that car fire in New York earlier? No, what was the car fire about? Was that some police interaction, or was that some terrorism, a car bomb? What was that about? Because I've seen plenty of car fires. The interesting part is what caused the fire and how did it come to be? That's what I want to know. But guys, I think that does it for tonight's show. I think I've made it to the end of the show. I've covered just about everything I wanted to cover tonight. But before I go, make sure you guys subscribe to the Citizen Man backup channel. If you haven't subscribed to the backup channel, please make sure you do. In case they zap me over here on YouTube on Citizen Man TV, you will still be able to find me on Rumble with all my content in all its splendor. I got well over 500 videos on Rumble with great information. So if you're new to the channel and you enjoyed this show, I strongly advise to go over to Rumble, because that's where the vast majority of my political content is, because YouTube censors too much. So the only content that's really safe to keep up on YouTube is my flat earth content. So you'll find a lot of that on Citizen Man TV. But on Citizen Man over on Rumble, is where you'll find the political content. So get on over to Rumble, give me a follow, and support the operation. We got a lot of information. We got a lot of big things happening and a lot to go over. So we have to stay connected, and you guys got to go get that prerequisite knowledge. So when you start to see these events unfold, you don't have to wait for me to come tell you what's going on. You'll already know what's going on. And now you can just watch my show for confirmation rather than information. Also, last but not least, if you guys would like to support the show, my brother Barnes says, great show as usual. Appreciate that, Barnes. If you guys would like to support the show, you could do so by sending in a kind donation via Cash App, PayPal, or Venmo by using the tag scrolling across the screen in the banner below. The links that are pinned to the top of the YouTube chat in the black box where it says Citizen Man TV in yellow. Just click the yellow, the box opens up, and all the links are there. You can also find those links in the description box of every video on YouTube and Rumble. And we got 5 supporters on the board, so I'm relatively happy, happier than I normally would be. I would like to get to 10, but I think the 5 goal is more reasonable because we actually hit that like nothing. So I'll keep the goal at 5, and 10 would be the bonus. So let me do the shout out. Shout out to my sister Joy, says finally catching the live. Shout out to my brother Arthur. He says support for the show. And shout out to my brother Keith, says support. And shout out to my brother Gary. Those are the Cash Apps. Shout out to my brother Gary on the PayPal. And shout out to my brother Lee14224 on the PayPal. Says, have a great Wednesday show. Oh, I intend to, bro. And I believe I have. I think I have. I mean, it wasn't as long as the usual long form shows, but we did cover a lot. And I hope that I shed some light on some things for you guys that you may have been confused about. I hope I've answered your questions. And if I have not answered your questions, feel free to send me an email. I'll be sure to get back to you. And brother Amani, if you're watching, my brother Amani Butler sent me an email about mainstream media hit piece on Trump that I plan to cover sometime soon. I just got to take the time and do some more digging and do some more research into that shit. Shout out to my sister Joy for another Cash App. Appreciate you, Joy. We're still at 5 supporters. We have 6 donations, but 5 supporters because, Joy, you're one person, so I can't count you as 2 supporters, even though you supported twice, and it is greatly appreciated. But, damn it, what was I saying? Oh, yeah, I plan to cover that hit piece that they're trying to do on Trump to link Trump to Epstein and make Trump out to be some kind of pervert and shit. And that type of crap only works on the demoralized minds. So I'm going to have to cover that. And I want to do a full-on Flat Earth stream sometime soon, too. I want to get back to doing the Flat Earth shows because I know you guys really, really enjoy those. So, you know, pretty triggering. So we'll get on that, too. Also, don't forget that the red X through the PayPal logo is just to remind you guys that PayPal censors comments. So keep it surface level. Otherwise, they'll freeze your account and try to steal your money. And then they'll want to count your ball hairs to give you your account back. So protect your account and mine by keeping it surface level. But the PayPal is, of course, as you can see, 2 people did donate to the PayPal. So the PayPal is functional. Joy says, understood, no problem. Yeah, Joy, I just want to make that clear. So when I say I want 10 supporters, you know, that's to avoid having the same person drop $1 10 times. Then I have to say I got 10 supporters. I don't need nothing else when I only made $10 off one supporter. You feel me? That's to avoid that. Plus, I want everybody to get I want as many people to get shout outs as possible, because the more names I shout out that donate to the show is the cooler I look and the more interesting my show looks, and it's more attractive to new viewers. Because when the new viewers come in and they see so many people throwing money in the pot, that adds value to the content. And when they see that other people value the content, they will be more likely to contribute, whether it be through sharing, subscribing, or donating themselves. So there's a bit of a strategy there. I'm not trying to be a stickler or a jerk or anything. Just explaining the strategy so you guys can more effectively help me in implementing that strategy. So no offense, no hard feelings, no worries. It is all good. It is all love. It's all love over here. You know, we block the trolls. We don't fuck with the trolls. When the trolls show up, we block their ass. Matty Mike says, blessing citizen man, been catching replays. Yeah, I noticed I've been having a lot of replay viewers. I get more replay viewers than actual show viewers. And it's the weirdest thing ever, but I don't mind. So shout out to all my replay viewers. Shout out to everybody watching right now. And shout out to everybody that's going to be watching the future shows, because we will be back on Friday with another show. The daytime jobs are starting to slow down. We're going into the slow season. It's getting cold now, so there's less demand for outdoor services. And so I will have more time and I'll be able to do more streams and give you guys more information and, you know, have more interactions. I know you guys be looking forward to me going live and you're kind of disappointed when I don't. So I don't want to keep disappointing you guys, but now I have the opportunity to actually start rebuilding my channel, getting my numbers back up, and reestablishing myself. I had been so successful on YouTube before they started censoring me. That's why they had to start censoring me, because my channels were growing too fast and I was making too much money. Would you guys believe me if I told you in the past, on my past channels that were much bigger than this, one of my biggest channels, I actually collected over $2,000 in donations in one night. One show, 3 hours, $2,000. Would you believe that shit? Now, that was way higher than what I would normally make, but my normal take would be anywhere from $300 to $600 a show, which is pretty awesome, because if I could do a show like that every day and make that kind of money, I don't have to work. This could be my job. But I need you to help me make that possible. And you make that possible by getting more people to the show, supporting the show, encouraging more people to support the show, and you'll get more Citizen Man. That's just the way it works. Matty Mike says, quick question. I've been asking this for months now. Wasn't Cuomo disrespecting Trump through the entire pandemic? So why was Trump endorsing him? Also, wasn't Cuomo a Democrat? So how did he run? Trump endorsed Cuomo kind of just as a gag to it was just kind of like a fuck you to Mom Donnie, because nobody really cared that Trump endorsed Cuomo. You know, it's funny. I didn't even know Cuomo was running until I heard about Trump endorsing him. But Trump endorsed Cuomo because, as shitty as Cuomo is, he was better than Mom Donnie. That's the best I could tell you. He would have been better for New York than Mom Donnie. How did he run against another opponent that is a Democrat? Also, wasn't Cuomo on the Gitmo list? I saw the transcript. So how is running? Is that his ghost? LOL. No, it could just be a body double filling in for him, because we're not supposed to know or be aware that Cuomo was picked up by the military and shipped off to Gitmo. So he had to make an appearance somehow, and that was his way of appearing. And this is why he didn't make such a big presence during the campaign. And also in several cities that are majority Democrat, you'll always have Democrats running against Democrats. That's just the way it goes. That's just the way it is. There are no Republicans running. And if there are no Republicans running, then the race would be between a Democrat and a Democrat. That's just the way the cookie crumbles in those Democratic cities, my brother. I hope I answered your question, but I got to go. So once again, I appreciate you guys being here. Definitely appreciate the love and the support. You guys are awesome. Thank you for that. And I will see you on the next one. Citizen Man, out.